Hey everyone, in this episode of the Rescue One podcast, we talked to Jim Burneka, former Dayton, Ohio firefighter, author of the book Overcoming Tuesday, and co-founder of the Brothers Helping Brothers Conference. It's a wellness, physical and mental wellness conference in Ohio that they do every year. We talk about loss, addiction, his issues with his mental health issues, cancer, some of the things that he went through on the job and off the job, his experience at the Center of Excellence in Maryland, as well as some advice he'd give to younger guys. So I hope everybody gets a lot out of this. He has a lot of wisdom to share, and especially the younger guys on the job that maybe relate to some of these things, and he can help guide you. But please check out his book, check out the Brothers Helping Brothers Conference, and now my episode with Jim Burneka. This episode is sponsored by Gatorade Lemon Lime.
Like Mike.
Please. Please. Yeah. I'm going to do the, I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to do the intro beforehand. So I'll let you, let's talk about how you got into the fire service. When you, writing this book, and I think kind of your career and people that know you, they kind of think of you as a Dayton firefighter. But you started before that. Where did you get started, and what got you started in the fire service?
Yeah, so my dad was a softball player, and he played with a couple guys he went to high school with, and they were Dayton firefighters. And so I basically grown up being around them a couple times a week in the summertime, watching my dad play. And when I think I was 16 or so, I remember I wasn't driving yet, but my dad actually dropped me off to one of the stations with one of his friends. It was a Friday night, and I just got to basically hang out with him for, 4 or 5 hours. And I really didn't know what I was getting into, but I just love that whole atmosphere. I mean, it's crazy to think, like, my memory is here or there for a lot of things, but like I really, really, really remember that day very clearly, and like the people that were there. I mean, everything. It just stuck with me, and I know I said this line on one of a show I did with TJ a while back, and I realized right then it was, going to work was hanging out with your friends and going on adventures. And that's what, that very first day, that's what it was like. And I was like, I could do this. This seems like fun. And of course, I didn't know any of the bad stuff back then. It was all good stuff. It was, let's go fast, let's sirens, let's, we didn't see a fire or anything that night, but like, you could just tell, like, these guys got along. They're getting paid to hang out and bust on each other and then go out and do a job. It was just love at first sight, really, my first experience. And I knew right then and there, like, this is what I want to do. And I knew I wanted to be in Dayton. That's where I grew up. It's where I lived up until, I was early 30s, I think. And it just, in that area for sure, like, Dayton Fire was where it's at. There was nobody that came close. If you had to, you had to go to Columbus, you had to go to Cincinnati. We were, when I started, we were 400 people and did a lot of stuff. It's busy, and it only got busier as years went on, and they cut us down to about 300, and yet we were doing more runs than ever before. So, and I know that's the case everywhere, but I didn't just start with Dayton. I ended up starting part-time at a few places, few of the suburbs, around Dayton. And, being 19, 20 years old doing that. And it was different because one was a pretty nice, richy kind of suburb, land of milk and honey. Everything's nice. They don't do a whole lot. And then another one was basically like a little Dayton. And I'll tell you that department really prepared me for what I was getting into when I did start Dayton. And I started in Dayton when I was 21. So,
Yeah. And then after you were on the Dayton, I know you had taken on a bunch of ancillary roles. I know you had started a business. You had been affiliated, with you started working with the Firefighter Cancer Support Network up until the point where you were the interim president for a little while. You worked your way all the way up in that organization, and you've had all these experiences, and it's like, the first time I met you was at the Brothers Helping Brothers conference that you are the co-founder of with you and Nick, and I had no idea you had like all of this story to tell. I knew there was a story, but reading the book, and I feel like I really got to know you really well. It's got to be, and you can tell it's a culmination of stuff. Unfortunately, it's a culmination of trauma as well. And I read a lot of positive stuff in there, good stories, and it seemed like you had a fun career, but it also seemed like you had a really tough career and a tough life. But there's got to be like a point where you thought to yourself, I'm going to write a book, which is so wild. And I can only imagine how much work comes into that. Was there a point where you were like, I'm going to write a book, or what kind of drove it to you? Because drove you to do it? Was it something that you felt called to, or I don't know. I've always been interested in that. Like, how does somebody take all the experiences and go, I need to put this down on paper?
So I'll take you on a little journey about how this even came to be. And it really actually started with the late, great Bobby Halton. And I had put in for a class at FDIC on how to create and enhance your fire department's wellness program. And that had been accepted. So it was going to be my first time teaching at FDIC. And part of the deal is with them, once you get accepted, they ask you to also write an article regarding your class. And I've written already a bunch of articles for fire engineering at that point, Firehouse, whatever, Crackle, and I did this. I always write an outline of my article. Like, that's how I start. It's just been my process. And I'm writing this article about this wellness program class, and this outline is like 8 pages, just the outline. And I'm looking at this and I'm just going, this is bigger than an article. Like, it's going to be tough for me to do this class in an hour and 45 minutes, and it's going to be tough to write an article about this. So I remember I sent him the outline and I just said, this seems more like a book. And he said, it absolutely is if you want it to be. And so that's kind of was the first thought of writing a book, was actually that outline and talking to him. And unfortunately, it was the last time I talked to him was about that.
What year? And that was the year before he passed away, or that was the year he passed away?
That was it was a few months before he passed away.
So was that 22 or 23 that he passed away? I think it was.
Man, if you asked me upstairs, I'd look at the coin. I feel like it was 20.
The FDIC 22. Always, actually, you're right. I have it right here, December 19th, 2022. I was
and I felt like I would have talked to him in, I think it was September or October. So it was just a little bit beforehand. And so that kind of got
2022. You started thinking about
that kind of got me starting to think about it. But at the same time, like, that's the funny thing is I remember getting accepted for FDIC while while I was at the IFF Center of Excellence. So there was definitely some irony there, as far as like, here I am, a mess myself, getting help, and now I just got accepted to teach a class on wellness.
What's
And
that like? I mean, I know you know, we're going to talk about the Center of Excellence, but you wrote about this in the book, and I think, you know, I'm trying to get people to read this book too, because it was fantastic. But, um, you know, you're in this program and you're getting accepted, you know, to teach. Um, what was the title of your class at FDIC?
how to create and enhance your fire department's wellness program.
Wellness program, right? You know, I imagine, you know, I mean, what were you thinking? What were you feeling?
When I got that email,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. I, I definitely was excited. I was happy. I mean, I had put in for many years beforehand and never got the nod. And so I finally got it. But I mean, I couldn't help but think it was hilarious that here I am now being asked to teach, and I'm clearly a mess. And I realized at that time that I just had to include this part in there. Like, I needed to, like, this was going to be part of that class, and it was,
I
and
wish I wasn't
I
stuck
think,
at the booth.
and I think that really, in a way, that really started my really being kind of public and open and honest and vulnerable, was that talk, because I really put myself out there. Um, and I mean, it was, I thought very well received. And I don't think a lot of people knew that that was going to happen. I mean, I'm up there, I'm talking, I'm in a suit, I'm playing the part, and but just a couple months ago, I was there in Maryland,
Yeah.
where nobody ever gave me any crab cakes. It's bullshit.
Not one crab cake in
Not one.
the Center of Excellence in Maryland.
No.
Crab cakes and football. That's what Maryland does. So yeah, that's funny. So fast forward,
Yes.
you're through this class. You got all of the
When
I guess motivation,
I
but
think that outline that I had wrote initially, I did write the article, and it was long, and it did make it. It was in December's issue of Fire Engineering, and they actually cut a bunch of it out, because again, it was long. It covered. There's a lot to wellness. Um, but when that whole idea of the book, it was more in line with, I think, the way it was set up was more like a textbook, and I'm not a textbook guy. Um, and so I kind of knew that wasn't really the right fit, but it still had my interest in writing about wellness. And so when, all the stuff happens with me, but I finally able to retire. I finally get, my pension. So I have security all of a sudden, like my family and I we're good. And at that point in time, it was like, all right, I can finally talk about this stuff, because I had, and it was, I mean, looking back, it was pretty irrational, but I really had, at that time, I had fear that I would be screwed with one way or the other, or the pension stuff would be screwed with, or something. Like, if I would have been, if I would have said what had happened, um, I really thought there could be retaliation. And so I just kept it internal for months upon months. But it was like, as soon as that I got the okay that I was good, that I was in the clear, then it was like, well, I got a lot to talk about then. I'm ready to talk. And at the same time, it's like, I had my sister, she was bugging me. She knew that there was a story there, and she didn't even really know a lot of the stuff. But she felt like we should do something. And so she asked me a while back, and at that time I wasn't ready. And I was like, absolutely not. No, I'm not going to put myself out there. And, but again, like after I was retired and it was in the clear, like, I don't know what, but it was like just a light switched with me. And it was like, I do think I want to do this. But it was, and I kind of just sat on that idea, and I really, for a little bit, just thought to myself of what do I want it to look like? I knew I didn't want it to be a textbook. And so the question became, can I write my story, but also make it kind of like a resource guide? Because I know I'm not the only one out there that's having issues with whatever. And if I could put in there, like if I could talk about my struggles, talk about whatever I went through, but at the same time, like lead the reader to the help, like, so they don't have to search for it. It's like right there, and they can get the help, and they're better off because of that. That was like kind of like my conditions for even doing the book. Like, I'm willing to do this, but it has to be like this. And I finally talked to my sister about it and said, basically, are you still interested? And she said, absolutely. And I pitched her the idea of, like, this is what I want it to be like. Do you think we can make this work like that? And um and I had, and there's other books out there that are kind of like that. And so I sent her probably half a dozen different books that were kind of similar to this, to kind of what we were going to do. And when we basically said, all right, well, let's, I got cleared for the pension in June, and I really had the conversation, I think, with her in July. And at that point, it was, okay, I'm going to write an outline. That's what I do, about just really just ideas, chapter ideas. And when her kids and my kids went to school, the idea was we're going to start, because she lives in Greenville, South Carolina. So the idea was we're going to just meet on Zoom in the mornings, and I'm going to pick something off of that list, and I'm going to just tell her the story. And she's going to take a bunch of notes, ask a bunch of questions, and then basically write out that chapter and then send it to me. I look it over, I make changes, and we go back and forth until it was accurate. And so we did that really for a couple months. And there were some days in which I could tell her 4 different stories and I was fine. And there's some days in which, like, I told her one thing and I was spent. Like, I was like, I'm done. I don't want to talk about anything else. Like, I'm walking away from this shit. And, when we look at that list, I think that the typical person would go, I bet you he's going to start at the easy stuff first. And that is not what I did. Like, day one, I think she almost had a panic attack because I went like dark and deep, like right from the go. Like, here we go. And she had to make the decision of, like, I can't necessarily be his sister. Like, I need to just take it all in and write the facts and put it out there. So it kind of threw her off that first day when we finally started. And it turns out, if you talk to her, I mean, she would tell you she didn't know 90% of the stuff. And we were pretty close. And I think that just speaks to, like, how much I was hiding from her and that's about everybody. Like, I internalized so much stuff. And I think I just didn't want to burden anybody. I didn't want them to have to carry any of that stuff. I mean, it was kind of like, I can just deal with it. I got it, until I couldn't anymore,
You think that's why you said all that stuff first? Like, when she was like, what are the first, like, let's get some stories out there. And the first things you do is just go to, like, the worst stuff.
John, I don't know, man. I
I'm
don't,
not a
it,
psychologist.
it
I act as a
wasn't, I
psychologist.
could tell you it wasn't, like where I predetermined what I was going to start with. I mean, it was literally like I'm looking at this list, and I think I just had this inclination of, you know what, let's just get the hard stuff over with. I think that was more my attitude than anything.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's it's like it sounds like it's a lot of unburdening. Like I said, it's probably therapeutic, but you are reliving it. So I have all of us have calls we probably don't want to go through again. Um, but then there's so much stuff in there that was funny and like enjoyable to a like relatable way that made me see like how other people also view the fire service, like having fun and like you said, just hanging out with friends and going on adventures. um I had a couple of quotes in the book that I thought they really stuck out to me and I had to write them down, but one of them was a slip turns into a slide, and you had said that. And I think the reason I saw that is I have like addiction in my family, and I've seen a lot of my family have issues with it. Um, and it is a strange thing that I don't know if people know when they're going through that point. Like they're constantly talking to themselves, saying it's all right. They don't even realize they're on the slide. Um, I was, I'm hoping you can say like when you were starting to view yourself, like if you had whether it was your mental health or whether it was um, before you went to the center of excellence or whatever it was, but that slip turning into a slide. Um, how did you come to terms with that, like with yourself? Like, how were you in assessing yourself and saying, this is getting bad. I need to like calibrate. Was it like, were you able to do that or did other people have to point it out to you?
That's a great question. Um, I think I was in denial. Um, and I thought that, like, I was aware that things were bad. I mean, it's kind of, I mean, you can't not be when, you know, before you never had any type of ideation, you never had any voices, and all of a sudden that's there and it's not letting up. Like, so, like, I knew I was in a bad place, and I had so much shame and guilt, um, that it really ended up causing me kind of a delay in getting the help I needed. And I was not practicing what I was preaching. I would tell everybody to get help, go talk to somebody, like I knew all the resources. I had called and made reservations for I think five other guys for the Center of Excellence before I had to make the call myself. And but it was I think I was just in denial, and I was just hoping and praying that it would fix itself some way, somehow, like that, and with enough time that I would keep working on it, and I would be able to fix myself, and nobody would know. Because and I had that shame and guilt because I was the guy that everybody was supposed to come to for that type of help. So I really got bent out of shape with the appearance, the optics, if you will, about how does that look when, um, excuse me, the guy that we're supposed to go to get help goes and gets help himself. And I realize now how ridiculous that sounds, but at that time, like, it really stood in my way for getting help, and I acted, and I mean acted for months upon months. And it was only until I had a friend call me out on it. And I don't know if I was probably wearing jeans in October when I was with you, but I've got a pretty big, like, on my right leg, an IFF memorial, tattoo, and it's it's Colorado Springs. It's the IFF Memorial, and it's got, I think I have 6 or 7 guys that I worked with or knew that are on that wall. And I had this guy, and he just, dude, he called me out, and he said, I feel like we're going to add your name to your leg. Like he saw it before anybody else did. Like he could tell. And at that point in time, like I knew the gig was up. I couldn't fool anybody. I couldn't hide it. It wasn't a secret. It was now out that I'm circling the drain. And I mean, I'd left work that day. I remember I shot a text to my boss saying, I'm leaving. I'm not coming back. And I was just put on my own sick time or whatever. I don't even know what time they put me off on. And a week and a half later is when I finally gave in and made the call for myself. And that sucked. Like finally accepting the fact that I cannot do this by myself. And that has gotten to this point. Has gotten to this point now where I am going to go away. And I don't know how long I'm going to be away for, but I'm going to pick up and go away. And when I made that phone call, and I know it doesn't work this way all the time with them, but man, I was on plane the next day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
what's that place like? What was the experience like?
Gosh. Yeah. It's a weird dynamic because like I didn't like being there. But that's not to say it was a bad place. I don't think anybody likes being there. Of course, everybody would rather be home and with their family and their friends and be normal. But that wasn't, I mean, it wasn't the situation. And I've thought about it a lot lately because it was 2 years ago yesterday that I showed up there.
Oh, wow. No shit.
2 years ago. So
congrats.
Oh, thank you. And it's to think about like what's happened even in those 2 years. Like it's been crazy, but it's been good. Ultimately, it's been good. You know, and things are infinitely better now.
Are you still in touch with some of the guys in that class?
Oh, yeah.
That you were in with?
Oh, yeah.
That's so cool. I love that.
Yeah, well, that's the best part about that place is your peers.
Yeah.
I mean, they are all fellow firefighters, medics from all over the country. I mean, we had Hawaii, we had Alaska, we had everybody. And like they were all, it was it's an interesting dynamic because you go there, like when you walk in and you see, like when I walked in that first day, like I'm broken. I'm at my wit's end, you know. But you see people in different points of their recovery. And you see where their head is down and it's woe is me and they're falling apart initially, but you see, you know, you would see those graduations and those people leaving and they're like ready to take on the world again. And so like pretty quickly you end up having hope that like, especially when you talk to those people that are getting ready to graduate and they basically say, hey, I was where you were at. But you know, you just got to do the work. Just do the work. Yeah. What they're saying there, I don't know. I wish I would have kept track about how many times they said it, but it's always trust the system, or trust the process. Excuse me, trust the process. And that's it. And it's basically a lot of time, a lot of classes. But I really personally, for me, the most healing I had was when we weren't in class. when we were at lunch, or we were sitting outside, and they had a fire going. Like, just talking to your peers and just kind of working through a lot of that stuff. That's what I think was most beneficial to me. But no, I ultimately, like, what do I want to go back? No, no, but it's a great place, and there's definitely value in it. And for us in particular, with how we do things, which is it's just different than the general public.
Yeah.
So having a place where you can go, in which you can truly be yourself, and the clinicians understand you for the most part. The staff, they all understand. They know firefighters. They know we want our coffee. They know we cuss a lot. Like they get us. They get that we're all. I mean, you're teaching a class, and you're teaching a class of 12 alpha males, that know better, but don't. you know, uh,
Yeah.
it was just it was a good environment, and it is where I needed to be. And looking back, I wish I would have actually took it even a little bit more serious. And
Hmm.
I fought really hard to get out of there. And I mean, it was just homesick. Like, I mean, again, I left with a night's notice, and I ended up being there for 40 days. Typical
Yeah.
stay there, the average is 35. In my head, I thought I was going to be there for like 2 weeks, and I was going to be good. That's the narrative that I told myself, and I was full of shit. And looking back now, I could tell you, like, I actually left prematurely
Hmm. No
because
shit.
I got out and I continued to struggle. I still had a lot of things to process and to work through, and I needed time, and I needed to talk things out. And so I left. I do think I left prematurely, but I was so ready to get out that it didn't matter. Like, I just wanted to be home. I wanted to be with my wife and kids. And I think it even got even turned up more when I found out that my oldest, who was at that time would have been 9, was starting to kind of act out.
Yeah.
And
It's tough.
dude, that just again, like, I guess I could take on whatever, but like, when you're now I'm affecting my kid, like, that really hurt. And it
Hmm.
made me want to get home even quicker, you know. And I
Yeah.
could have, you could leave at any time you want. They're not going to stop you. You can
Yeah.
just walk out. There's no gate. I always pictured, that there's some big gate and you're locked in. You're not locked in. You could leave. You're there because you want to get better. Is basically what it is. And um, I ultimately, I didn't leave early. I did graduate from there. Um, but I still think I could have probably done some more time there, and it would have been better, because I went home and I started working again in intensive outpatient programs and clinicians and everything else, and it's not like it stopped. But for me, like, for my department, everybody that had gone to the COE beforehand, they came back. They may have had a week or two off, but then they went back to work full duty, and I just wasn't ready. I was not ready for that at all. So I came back, and ultimately they hid me away for 90 days at radio repair, which was a blessing, really. Out of sight, out of mind. Because I truly, and I think I say in the book, my friend Steve, he's the radio repairman. I actually changed my signature line on my email to the assistant to the radio repairman. Nobody ever caught on to it, but that just, again,
Assistant radio repairman? No. Assistant to
assistant
the
to the
radio
assistant.
repairman.
Yeah. He babysat me for 3 months, like, truly. And like, it was that bad that like I was just a wreck. Um, so I definitely needed more time. Like I had gone so far, and it wasn't instant going. You know, like all this stuff just added up and added up and added up. But it wasn't overnight that it, you know, all this stuff took effect. So it's not going to be overnight that I'm able to work through everything. I get it. It's a process. I wish that it was, you know, done out of the way and over with, but it's still not to this day. It's it's a lot better. It's manageable, but I'm still working through stuff. And you know, at this point, I don't know if I'll ever be done.
Yeah, isn't that kind of the thing though? Like all of us have to, in my opinion, I mean, view it like it is continual work. Um, we have a lot of good phrases for stuff, and I think there's some buzzwords about mental health where they say like, you know, mental resilience and even the word mental health itself has become a buzzword. But when you have to dig into it and actually understand what it means, I don't know if anybody has any actionable items where you could say they kind of just we're just stuck in the awareness phase where it's like, yeah, mental health's a problem. What is the step to take? What are you doing about it? And I have my own feelings about that, about what we should be doing. Um, but I'll ask you, if this is a big question, so I know it's kind of not fair, but you have this experience with it. But if you were teaching a wellness program in the academy, what would you want to center the program around? If you had to build this thing out, if you were like kind of drawing out your outline, like you're writing your book,
Yeah.
because I've always asked this question, when I talk to people about mental health in the fire service, we all kind of understand the problem. I think we understand that it is a problem, and I think that's great. Where are we gonna take action, and how would it look like if you had to change it?
You know, another great question. I'd love it. And it makes me, because I've had these conversations before, and it's funny because my attitude is always, I want to tell them the truth.
Hmm.
Like, I'm not out to scare them, but I want them to have a really honest understanding of what they're getting into. And I've gotten pushback on that because I feel like I'm going to scare them. Like they're not going to want to do this job anymore. They're like, why am I getting into this? Because I it's just too much. And again, it's not my point to scare them out of the job, but nobody, and it's probably the same way with you. Like nobody talked about any of this stuff when we were starting.
Nope.
It wasn't a thing. Yeah, nobody talked about cancer. We didn't really know about it then. It wasn't really until 2006 in which we really had the first big study came out that we're like, oh, there's something here. And even after that, it was still taboo for a long time. And mental health was, followed behind that. So I got none of that stuff. And I got the
Yeah.
same, I got the talk, and anybody who has any years on have heard these words being probably said to them before, where somebody said, suck it up, buttercup, don't be a pussy, or you sure you're cut out for this job, kid?
Right.
And I don't think that, I hope that doesn't happen anymore. I don't think it does. At least it's not as often because we finally are talking about it. So my attitude is just tell them the truth. But with the truth, like, yes, we have a higher incidence of cancer compared to the general public. We have a higher incident of suicide compared to the general public. We have a really high um, rate of divorce compared to the general public. So you can address those problems, but the key is to follow it up with the how are you going to prevent this? If you're going to talk about the problem, you also got to talk about the solution.
Right.
So you're going to talk about cancer prevention. You're going to talk about wearing your packs the entire time throughout overhaul, no exception. You're going to talk about getting your annual medical physical and also an annual skin exam. every year, not just for your career, but for your entire life. You're not going to talk about not wearing your gear unless you have to. And with the behavioral health stuff, you talk about the signs and symptoms. You talk about, the you're going to see trauma, and you may have nightmares, or you may not be able to sleep, or you may feel like you need to escape, and the only way you can escape is by numbing yourself in a bottle. Like, I mean, just having that conversation and saying, but you can change that. You can help that. You can talk to a clinician. You can do EMDR. Like, there are tons of tools that are available. And all you have to do is just say you need help, which is easier. I mean, obviously, even I had trouble with that. But you just kind of create that environment that, yes, this is all our reality, but you can take steps that are going to reduce your risk of dealing with all this kind of stuff. So it's just being honest, but also following up with, this is what you have to do so you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
Take it from me. And that means, a lot of times, that means bringing a couple people in, especially if we're talking recruits. You bring in some people who have had cancer. You bring in people that have struggled with behavioral health, that have been the center of excellence or had ideation. Like, you make it personal.
Yeah.
That's another key, and this is not, when you're talking about this subject, man, like, I enjoyed doing this because it was just raw. It was just brutally honest and raw. And it's not something that those kids are going to be tested on, but it is something that they just need to know for the rest of their life, the rest of their career at least. And I truly felt like, I mean, they have our recruit academies are like 20 weeks or so. I don't even know how long they are anymore. They're long.
That's long.
And so think about how many classes and how many things you go over during that time period. I would usually get an hour, maybe an hour and a half. I truly, and I'm not just saying this because it's me, but I truly felt like that hour and a half was the most important hour and a half that entire drill school.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, it's going to depend on the places. I know there are some places that really do a good job, and they even bring in their spouses to talk about that stuff too, which is another thing. That's a missing key of a lot of the stuff with behavioral health, because they see us when we're not at work, and they know when something's wrong. When we're at work, a lot of times we can act.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. I have a kind of like a standard operating procedure with Megan, my fiance, and like she knows if I have a really shitty call or something where it's just bothering me before I get home. Most of the time I'll shake it off, on shift. But if I'm bothered by it, we have a thing where we'll just go get coffee in the morning before I come home. Because for me, I want to decompress. This is just me personally. Everybody's got their thing, obviously, but some people want to go straight home. And I've come home before, and I'm like, I'm like foggy a little bit, and I kind of want to talk about it, but I want to get it all off my chest before me personally, I want to get it off my chest before I walk in the front door. I want to see my dogs, my girl, and just hang out and just already be at peace walking through the door. I feel like I have like that little decon zone, at the coffee shop, and that helped me a lot. And some people, I think, it'd just be, if you have that, but it's at your house, just to have like a saying, a code word, a phrase, or just even if it's just like, hey, I'm not doing too good on this call I had, and you can move on and you start whatever it is that you makes you feel better with that, whether it's talking right then or it's like, hey, I need an hour and then we'll talk later. Because I know a lot of people don't want to talk about it right away, and everybody's a little different. but when it gets talked about, having those tools I think is important, and then like knowing people have a different reaction to stuff. Like there's nothing that's wrong, you know. Everything you feel is normal.
Yeah.
Everybody feels different stuff.
You could
Like
have the same crazy call, and
yeah,
it's going to affect four people completely differently.
right. Yeah. So I
Some
I hope
people are
you guys
fine. Some people are like a mess. Like, yeah.
yeah.
And it
So I hope
doesn't
you guys
matter.
kind of
It's
look around and
whatever,
see that.
with the spousal stuff and going home. Um, there's a book out there that touches on that. And to me, it's the best chapter in the whole book. And it's by Mike and Ann Galliano. Um, and it's, I forget exactly what it's called. But it's about the firefighter marriage, and they call it reentry time. And basically, Mike was a Seattle fire captain, really respected dude. Um, he taught at our conference a couple. They both taught at our conference a couple of years ago, actually. But they like basically Mike would be able to walk in the door and he'd be able to basically shake his head, yes or no, or like, and his wife would give him space if he needed. If he had a rough night, go take a nap so I can get the best version of you afterwards. Go decompress. But if he had a good night and was ready to go, like they can go. So,
Thumbs up.
but they had that communication. I've had it. I can't remember if it was in that book or I saw it somewhere else. Where have you ever been to like a Brazilian steakhouse
Yeah.
where they have the little dice or whatever, and if you want whatever, it's green, and then when you're like full, it's like red, right? Like somebody had that, and they would use that, you
That's
know.
awesome.
So I mean, whatever works, whatever it is. I I wish I would have read that book a long, long time ago. Um,
Yeah.
it was pretty much. It was at the end of my shift world when I was still on shift that I finally got that, and that's when I started actually talking to my wife about stuff. It wasn't until and I talk about it in the book the Ebola call, which wasn't Ebola. That was when I came
I
home
remember that part.
and I was up all night, and I was terrified that I had just been exposed to Ebola, and I was locked in a hospital room for hours throughout the night, and then it's hilarious now. It ended up being bad acne, like really bad acne, like, but it fooled about everybody, and oh my gosh. But I just remember going home and my wife getting into me, and of course I never called her to tell her what was going on, and so I just unloaded. And that was really, I think, the beginning. But again, that was also towards the end of me taking runs too. So
Well, on that note, like if you also another big question, but if you had to give advice for like a rookie that you saw going down the same path that you were going down, whether it's suicidal ideation, whether it's too much alcohol, or I would say dependency on alcohol or drugs or whatever, what advice would you get them if you saw them going down that path? Because knowing what you know now, if you could intervene or have somebody come by, I know maybe for you, one of the things was your buddy saying, "Hey, I don't want to put your name on that wall." Um, what advice would you give them? Because I mean, if you can give them advice, I don't know. Like, would you have listened? I guess I don't know. But if there's advice to be given, what would you say?
it's another good question, John. Shit, you should do this for a living. Um, man, you know, I have been put in situations where, again, because I was the guy. So I mean, people would put me in touch with people, and they still do to this day. Like I'm retired from the Dayton Fire Department, but like they may not like it, but I'm still involved. Because people will call and I'll answer. But I do get a lot still of kind of like, hey, this person is doing this or doing this, like they're picking up on something going on, And I just kind of wrote a article for Crackle about this, and I called it's called being a peer support ninja. And what I really mean by that is, like, you can peer support, and it doesn't have to be this very formal process. It could be as simple as just stopping by the firehouse and saying you forgot whatever, and just picking up a conversation with somebody else on a different shift. Or it could be stopping by having lunch. Like, it could be whatever. Like, it doesn't have to be this big drawn out official thing. We're going to step into this office. Like, a lot of peer supporting is just checking in on people, saying hi, saying how you doing, what's going on, how are the kids, whatever it may be. Like, so, I mean, the good thing for me, what I have going for me that fortunately a lot of people don't have, is I have experience. Like, I have been through a lot of stuff, and I have been to a lot of places, a lot of different resources. Whether it's Center of Excellence or Save a Warrior, the Bridge Retreat. I mean, there's so many different things out there. I have that experience with those resources, and I have that experience with a lot of the different problems, whether it's cancer, whether it's behavioral health, whether it's ideation, whatever it may be. So for me personally, it's very easy to actually relate to somebody. And for me to be vulnerable and open up and share with what I went through. I mean, I have that, luckily, I don't want to say luckily, but I have that ability where I didn't necessarily have that years ago when I was still considered normal. And I did the air quotes for all those listeners out there. So me being vulnerable, me being open, me putting all my stuff out there, I've noticed it really will allow people to set their own guard down and open up and talk. And I think with that as well is the people that I'm dealing with, they know it stays with them or stays with me. Like, they have that trust. They know the confidentiality part. Um, and they also know that I'm going to take care of them. Like, I'm not going to lead them astray. And any of the things that I'm really probably leading them towards is something I've done myself. So I do have that capability. And I think it kind of, in a weird way, makes me kind of unique and in some ways an asset.
Yeah, so my dad struggled with alcohol all his life. He's been in AA for years now, successfully, and he's actually part of Rescue One CBD. He's a part owner, and he works. He bottles stuff up with us. He comes to FDIC with us. But his journey with being sober, the guy is a great dad, and he like was always present. I don't even think I say this all the time, man. I never saw the guy call out sick from work. He's like that generation. So he just never let it get to him, and he went into AA, and I was like, I had to ask him. I'm like, Bob, I don't. I mean, you drink a lot, but I thought that was for people who, like, this is me and my ignorance when I was really young. And I thought that's for people whose like lives are falling apart. And he's like, you know, he's had the wherewithal to see where he was going, and he's like, just because I'm on this elevator ride doesn't mean I have to wait for it to hit all the way at the bottom for me to get off. And I remember I was
Oh,
like, man,
that's
heavy.
that's
But
good.
he, I don't know. So he also, all his brothers though, had or currently have issues with addiction, in one shape or form or of another. And he had a lot. He's a middle child. He's 5 of 11. So he's like looking around, going like, well, some of these guys also have these issues, and it runs in the family, and I also, you know, I'm getting warning signs. So I always think about that with people. I'm like, if you could step in and intervene. One thing you said in your book, that was another quote that I really liked, was vulnerability breeds vulnerability. And you telling people the things you've gone through and being able to relate is important. And I wrote it down because I was assuming this is what you were going to say when I asked you that question, was basically like, hey, I'll tell you where I've been. I think I can relate. This whole book, when I was reading it, that's how I felt. I was like, there's forever and ever, you're going to have this thing in archives. This is it's a piece of history now. And, for the fire service, people are going to be able to relate to this long after I'm not working in the fire service anymore. There's going to be people that are because the human condition ain't going to change. So as people go through their career, there's going to be a lot of people that probably have a similar experience that you did, and hopefully they can read this and find some guide, or something to lean on and say, like, somebody else has done this before, and I was able to get through it too. I can get through it if Jim got through it. So I think it's awesome, man. It's pretty cool. I think it'll be looked upon very favorably when history looks back on it. So it's a pretty cool thing to be able to do that, to share. It's got to be hard. I can't imagine having to put myself out there. And it's also when you had mentioned how we teach new guys, it becomes culture. So you tell everyone in this class that you're teaching for wellness, hey, this is what you will all do if you have these issues, because that's what we do as a department. That's what we do. And if that's the norm and that becomes your culture, they pass it on. If it's like weird and nobody does it, then it becomes like a class that somebody took and they just don't pay attention to it. Things like writing this book and trying to put that into existence for people coming up, I think makes a culture. So you had a part in that. So congratulations. I think that's pretty awesome, man.
Yeah, thank you. Um, yeah, one of the things I always talk about is, man, because when you're teaching these recruits, they're doing everything the right way in recruit school, right? I mean, they got their shit down. But as soon as they get out in the streets and get in a firehouse, they're going to be met with a bunch of lazy firefighters that take shortcuts. And I always tell them, like, there's a decent chance on day one you're going to catch a fire. And being the rookie, you're going to be expected to be the first one in there and the last one to leave. And it's going to be time to do overhaul. And they're going to want you in there. And you're going to look around and you're going to see a bunch of these firefighters not wearing a mask. And you're going to have to make the decision right then and there. Like, are you going to give in to peer pressure? Or are you going to do what's right? And what I'm asking of you, and what I'm asking you to think of your, future family. Like, you don't even have, a girlfriend, let alone a wife and kids or anything, probably at this point in time. And so I'm asking you to consider them, these non-existent people, but trying to get them to think of the big picture and to make the right decision from the start. And that is hard. It's hard to do. So
Yeah.
hard.
The male brain does not develop fully until we're in our 30s. Foresight is not our strong suit. And dude, I even get it now. You had mentioned, you were saying, like, the whole suck it up buttercup conversation where you said, I hope that's not happening. I get that still. I still get that directed at me when I talk about CBD. It's mostly on social media and keyboard warriors and a little bit at FDIC and stuff, but I talk about the benefits of sleep, and say, like, hey, it's unhealthy to run 5 calls after midnight, so take care of yourself when you're off duty. And everyone's like, dude, if you can't hack it, quit. I'm like,
John, I mean, I still call a lot of the shit I'm doing now hippie shit, because that's how I
right,
thought, like, the
right.
meditation, the yoga,
Yeah.
mindfulness, just a lot of these practices that I now do, like I was absolutely like, that's a bunch of hippie shit. I'll never do that.
I hear you.
Uh,
I hear you.
until I did,
Same.
until it, and I realized it helps. And like, you know,
So you know what I found effective, man. When I talk to younger people. So I run the cadet program too for our department. So we have ages from 14 to 21, and it's the Explorer program is what some people call it, cadet program, whatever. But I'm like, everybody wants to be a badass. Everybody wants to be the go-to guy, girl. You know, how bad would it suck if like 5 years in, you couldn't do it anymore? It's like the movie Moneyball.
hmm.
Like we're all told at some point we can't play the game anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are told at 5 years, some people are told when they're 50, but we're all told if you want to do this for a long time, take care of your shit, mentally and
And
physically.
I'll double down on that. What's the point of putting in 25, 30 years just so you can retire and die in 3?
Yeah.
That doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense to me.
Yeah. That is very hard for a 20 something to think about. At that point, they're invincible. You can't tell them shit,
And
so it's
that's
hard.
just why you need somebody authentic and brutally honest to be there
Yeah.
and to to help guide them. And
Right.
hopefully you have that person too when they get to the firehouse.
Hopefully. Yeah. Hopefully.
That key man, that that role model, that mentor. Um
Yeah.
gosh, I know I did. And Lord knows they tried to help me. And I couldn't get out of my own way for the longest time. And that just
You got to
made,
want to.
well, and that just, but it just, when I finally was able to really contribute, like, I think it made it that much harder because I had already dug a hole with my reputation
Mm.
and just trying to dig out of it. And I know, like, I know what I've done, especially on the outside of the department. It's been some pretty significant things for the fire service, but and I think that I get a lot of respect um outside my department. My department is still like, Chip Burneka is a goof, you know, and and I deserve it because I was one.
Yeah.
I'd say my first 2 decades of my career, I was the world's okayest firefighter. And it was only at the end where I finally got in that wellness spot that I could really do what I was supposed to do.
Everybody finds their niche, man. You really do. You end up where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
It's hard to find sometimes, but I think people do. You gotta be called to it. And yeah, I'm glad you were called to it because it's definitely where you're supposed to be, and you've given a lot. Are you teaching at FDIC this year coming up?
I don't know. I don't know yet.
You're waiting. Oh, you're waiting to hear. You put in.
Yes, I did put in. Always put in. But
Me too.
yeah, I have no idea. I think people started getting announcements yesterday. So
Oh no shit. Okay. Wow.
so
I'm gonna make an effort, man. I will get out of my booth. I caught Dina Ali's class. It was the only class I caught. We had like a lull, and I could run out. I was
I
like,
was in there
perfect
with you.
timing. Yep, I was hiding in the back. Showed up late, but I did stay for the whole thing when I did show up. I'll easily do the same thing. I'm bringing a few more people this year, so when you get picked, I will follow up with you and make sure I can jump in because that would be really awesome. And I'm trying to make it so that I don't have to be kind of like working behind the counter the whole time in the booth. I love walking around and
Working a booth is
people.
miserable.
Yeah, I know you've done it a few times. It is.
You
it's
had a
grind.
good location.
Yeah, we got the same spot.
Every time I
last year,
passed you guys, you were, I think, and well, I was only there for one day, but you guys were hustling whenever I passed by.
Insanely busy. We ran out of product. We ran out of topical, and we almost ran out of our sleep formula. It was insanely busy. Yeah, it was crazy, which just speaks to how people are starting to open up to it. But got the same spot next year, and I brought more people, so we're going to do it in like shifts. Because what we did this time is basically like everybody's there for 10 hours each
You
day.
guys like drove up, didn't you? Yeah.
My dad and I drove up. Casper and my buddy Tom flew up. So I think it's actually going to be cheaper for us to fly. It's so expensive to drive up. So we're going to fly up and have everything set up again, and then I'm going to have people in shifts. So, a couple of guys can go walk around the convention and see everything. We don't really get to do that. I actually drove up to Chicago last year for a day to do an interview with some of my favorite guys up there, the Chicago's Bravest Stories podcast guys. So Vince brought me into the studio and we did like a bit. Never met him in person, and I love Chicago, so it was cool to go. But I just kind of popped in, didn't even get to eat, like ran out, and I was back at the booth by sundown. So yeah, this year's going to be good. I'm looking forward to Brothers Helping Brothers. Can we talk about that for a second? Do you want to
Yeah.
tell everybody what that is, like how that's come to be? Because I think that's a really really important conference.
Yeah. So we're getting ready to put on it's crazy. It's been this long, but our 7th annual Firefighter Health and Wellness Conference. And it's my buddy Nick and I. Nick is the co-founder of Brothers Helping Brothers. And he just suckered me in all those years ago. Initially, he just asked me to do a class on cancer. And then he started telling me like the other names that he had on this list, and I was like, well, you can't have that person if you have that person because they don't get along with that person and that person. And like I blew his mind. Like he had no idea that there was politics regarding the firefighter cancer world. It was insane. It's still kind of insane. And so, but before you know it, somehow I went from now I'm not teaching, I'm actually booking all the cancer parts and I'm helping him out. And his attitude back then was, cancer is a hot topic. We're going to talk about cancer, but we're also going to talk about behavioral health. We're going to put it in there. They're not even going to know it's going to be there. We're going to put it in there and shove it down their throats. And they need to learn this stuff. So he was actually ahead of me and a lot of people at that time, knowing the importance of behavioral health. And I think I was still alpha male, awesome, whatever. And, it kind of just grew from that. And we really developed like I never even met him before we met that first time to talk about the conference. And I mean, now the guy's my best friend. Like, talk all the time, not just about conference, but other really dumb stuff. And it just has grown and grown and grown. And but we've been able to keep things like kind of just do it our way. Like, the FDIC has their way, and it's wonderful and it's large, and there's 30,000 people that all come down to Indianapolis. Like, we're not trying to compete with them. We're an alternative. Like, FDIC is huge on tactics. You're not going to hear anybody talk about tactics with us. It's all going to be about our health and wellness. And the reality is yes, we're having line of duty deaths in an actual fire scene. That happens, but what's killing us more often than not is the other stuff, the cancer, the suicides, all that stuff. So having a conference that really just focuses on that, I think is huge. And so we've been able to have this really just heavy room going over deep stuff, but yet also have this weird dynamic of where it's still kind of fun to be at. And it's in the middle of, it's Ohio in October. So, that's kind of where the joke is. We call it exotic Beavercreek. And the joke is most conferences are down where you're at, Florida, or they're in Vegas or something. And, so who wants to come to Ohio? So we kind of did that just as a joke, and I think the other thing that is different about our conference is, and this really comes from Nick, and but I'm on board with it. When he became a new officer, his fire department didn't have any money to pay for him to go anywhere to get any training. And so he had to come out of pocket for stuff. And there's some places where it's just really, really expensive to go to. And so his attitude has always been, and I think it always will be, like, we're going to keep this as affordable as we can for the participants. Like, we want them, even if their department won't give them the money, like, we want them to be able to come out of pocket, for themselves, to better themselves. So, you know, 2.5 days, $75. And for the quality of people that we have coming in, I mean, you're not going to find it anywhere else. And really how we do that is it's almost like the fire triangle. You need each part in order to have fire. So you need to have really good speakers. And in order to have really good speakers, you need to have the vendors that pay for the speakers. Thanks, John. And then you need to also, in order to have the vendors, you need to have the participants. Like, you need to have the attendees for the speakers, but also to be there to give the vendors business. And if you're able to get all three of those, you can have a successful conference. And that's just the formula that we've learned, and we've been doing that ever since. And it's, I think it also helps. Nick and I don't get paid anything for it. So, like, everything we get literally goes back into that conference, into just putting on that event and making it, the best experience as we can for all three of those parties that I just mentioned.
Yeah, if you guys, I'm putting out all this in the show notes, but please check that out for the conference. The by this time last year, it was filling up very, very quick, if not already sold out. So we're recording this on August 21st. It's going to come out a little bit after that, but you got to jump on it before you lose a spot here. You guys did move to a bigger location, so that'll help. But it is pretty awesome. There were some incredible guests I saw coming up. So with that, you can go check them out too. The website is in the show notes for Brothers Helping Brothers, and see some of the guests.
You should say what the website is, because it's hilarious.
I always Google Brothers Helping Brothers. What is the actual website?
Well, Brothers Helping Brothers gets you to it, but we did. Nick just randomly I think he just was bored one day and he was just typing in websites, and he realized that exoticbeavercreek.com was available. And he told me, and I was
Shocking.
like, buy that shit. Buy that right
Best
now.
$19 you ever spent?
Yeah, whatever it is. So you can go to exoticbeavercreek.com and make sure you use your work computer too. But no, it really is. It's really,
make sure you type it right.
It truly is. Legitimately, it goes to the event page of that.
That's so cool.
It speaks to, like, we definitely don't take ourselves too serious,
Yeah, last year was the Hollywood theme. Is this year? What's this year? Is it wrestling?
Pro wrestling, brother.
Pro wrestling.
Brother.
Yeah, brother.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I saw that.
So
you guys have the stadium, or the stadium set up, like, on the website. I saw, like, all the show lights and stuff.
Well, we got the beaver, because our mascot, of course, is the beaver, and we put him in a lucha libre mask, and
that's good.
Yeah, so we checked out the site today. We had our AV guy there with us, and just kind of checked it all out. And I was looking at the stage, and I'm like, how am I going to make this look like a wrestling ring? That was what I was working on earlier today.
I can't wait. It's going to be good.
So
it's gonna be good.
We're going to do theme songs, and
the intros when people walk
smoke and lasers and just try to be just silly,
over the top. I love it. That's fun, man. That's
so
really
yeah,
cool.
like,
I
again,
can't wait, dude.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be funny, but at the same time, I know the topics we're going to talk about.
Yeah, they're heavy.
Oh yeah, man. So, that's kind of the weird balance that we've been able to come off and do. And that's why I think when we do this, there's so many people that come back and come back and come back, because they appreciate that dynamic. And I think they also appreciate just the wholesomeness of us. Like, I mean, we're sincere about doing this. Like, because we know how it helps. Like we've seen firsthand um, how it can positively affect,
Yeah.
our attendees. Like, and it's enough to where it makes it absolutely worthwhile. Working really an entire year on putting this thing together, for 3 days, but the response you get, you're like, all right, it's worth it. I used to, and Nick would tell you this, like every year I would be like, this is my last one. And I stopped doing that because I'm like, no, I realize now I'm going to do this forever. Like,
Yep.
it's not going to
I
stop
know the
because
feeling.
I know I've seen it firsthand. So, the experience. So, and it
Yep.
is, it is worthwhile, to do.
Absolutely.
And it's a
Absolutely.
similar way, even I'd say with a book. Like I didn't know initially if like a dozen people would buy it. And then to see like how well it's been embraced really by the fire service, and how it's positive it's been and the interactions I've had, like completely worth it. Yeah, absolutely 100% completely worth it. I know I made a couple people upset and stuff in there, but like there's been so much more positive than negative.
Yeah, but the truth hurts, man. And if you tell enough of it, I mean, it's gonna ruffle feathers. That's just anything. So, I mean, that's just a testament to you actually putting realness in there, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of how it is. So, awesome, man. Well, so I think this is a great place to leave off. Jim, thank you so much, man. Thank you for writing the book. Thank you for taking time to speak with me and the friendship. I appreciate you bringing me in last year to present. I look forward to being there this year, and hearing some of this stuff from these amazing guests too. I brought extra help to that conference too, so I could spend more time. I spent barely any time inside last year, and we were very busy for a small conference. It was non freaking stop. I swear, not exaggerating. I think every single person in that entire conference rotated through to talk to me at my table at one point or another. I lost my voice by the end of the week. I was talking to so many people, and it's insane because I did not bring enough product. We sold out of every single thing. I went home with empty boxes. We sold out of every single thing that
That's
we
the
brought there.
goal. That's.
It was. So I tell vendors, I'm like, you can tell vendors to give them my number. I'll tell them what's up. It was crazy,
Well, I
but
mean,
he
everybody
was good.
everybody that's there. Like here's the difference, and I know I keep bringing up FDIC. I guess it's the biggest circus in town, right? But I mean, so many people go there because their departments are paying for them, and they're
Hmm.
really just there for you know a fun week in Indy and some shrimp cocktail. You know,
Yep,
that's what they're there for, and
that's
I
it.
would say that the people that come to our show are genuine. They're there because they want to be there,
Absolutely.
and because they care about either their own wellness or that and everybody else that they work with wellness, and they're there
Yeah,
trying to do that. So like you have these participants, these attendees, and they're into this stuff. Like they're not just a warm body. Like no, like they give a care. That's a crap, whatever. They care about what's going on in that room. What the topics are.
absolutely.
Like I think that's the main difference, and that's kind of the unique thing for us and
Yeah,
our
and being there
vendors.
specifically for it. Yep, that's it, man. That's why I'll keep coming back. So love it, man. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. How can people reach out to you besides going to exoticbeavercreek.com? What's a good way to
Dude,
reach out to you?
OnlyFans.
Hell yeah.
That's no. I put that in my slides when I talk, and it man, that's how I bring it home at the end. Is I
Yeah,
have that
that's
in
that's
there.
the clincher,
I
huh?
have a couple. I have a couple other little inside things
Uh,
too that are hilarious.
that's
But
good.
anyway, I
Nice.
digress. Jim Burneka Jr. I probably should spell that. BURNEKAJR@gmail.com is the email that I always use. I've got Facebook, I got X, I got LinkedIn, I got whatever, all that shit. The book can be found just on Amazon. I should say this shit, John. We should have talked about this. Make sure you buy Overcoming Tuesday if you're going on Amazon. There, some asshole wrote a fake book about me that's on there that I can't get them to take down, and it's called like Jim Burneka: The Untold Story or some shit like that, and it's untold because I never told it, and it's very weird.
Holy shit!
It's very. I bought a copy because I just wanted to see it myself, and I
Yeah.
as pissed as I am, I do think it's kind of hilarious because it's not like I'm a New York Times bestseller. Like, why are you picking on little old me? And
That's so
but it
odd.
says shit in there like where you like this is crap because it talks about like talks about my love for running. Like, that's a lie. Yeah. How I care for my senior citizens in my community. Like, it goes on and on. I'm a big fan of sunsets. Like, it's very bizarre. It doesn't say anything actually bad about me. If anything, it says good stuff about me. It's very weird.
Huh.
But when I followed the breadcrumbs and I tried to track down the author, I found out that the guy they say is the author died in 2016.
That's super weird.
It is so weird. And despite all that evidence, I still cannot get Amazon to take it down.
Huh.
So,
It's very odd.
sorry.
It's like somebody wrote an AI book.
Yes.
And then they were like, this book came out, it's going to start selling a lot. We want to do a copy of somebody who can read this as a fan. And they think they're going to make money off of it or something.
Yeah, they made my money, but that's about it.
Yeah.
So, and at this point, it's basically I need to get a lawyer to take it off, and I don't know if it's really worth it.
So don't buy The Untold Story of Jim Burneka.
Because it's untold.
Listed under fiction, right next to 50 Shades of Grey and How to Start an OnlyFans page. You don't want to buy that one. That's the wrong category. You want to buy Overcoming Tuesday.
Yeah, the one with all the good reviews, not the bad reviews. I did have a lot of my friends leave negative reviews on there to like let people know, like, hey, this isn't the real book.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty fun.
Yeah, Amazon. Last thing, Amazon.
I could put that in the notes too. The actual Amazon link for Overcoming Tuesday. I'll put that.
Well, I'm going to talk shit about them. Like, you call their customer service. You still can. You call their customer service, and you're trying to explain everything going on and what you've learned, and they're like, "That's great. We would love. We'll put that in an email. We'll send that to the fraud department." And I'm like, "Well, can I talk to the fraud department?" And they're like, "No, they don't have any phones." I'm like, "The fraud department doesn't have any phones?" They're like, "No, we can't even call them. Like, we can't. So you can't either." So that department and they handle all, and you can imagine how much fraud, because it covers all of Amazon. So it's not just books, it's everything. So
yeah.
So therefore you have to like try to talk to them with emails, and they don't even sign they sign their emails Amazon. Like, they don't put a name. So you don't know who you talk to, and every time you email them back, a different person responds. So that's why it's still up. It's a nightmare to deal with. So yeah, Amazon kind of sucks. But yet I still buy a bunch of shit from there.
Oh yeah,
because I'm lazy.
Yep. And some stuff's just on there more than wherever else. That's just it.
All right,
cool. Well,
end this before I start talking about something else, because I will.
All the show notes are going to have where you can get the book, where you can find Jim, and I'm putting your articles in there. I was taking notes as we were talking, so I'll put the Crackle article in there and that book, the spousal book you mentioned. So if you guys found any of the stuff that he was saying interesting and you want to like go dig deeper into it, I'll put it down there. And then, we're on, this will be on YouTube and our podcast page as well. So
You
you can
porn?
see it wherever you want. Yeah, it'll be on there.
Okay.
If you have a, if you have a, if you have your favorite podcast you listen to, you want to go on the YouTube side, you can see our ugly mugs over there, and vice versa if you just want to listen. So, thank you everybody for listening. Jim, thank you for being here. And Overcoming Tuesday out now. Check it out on Amazon. Thanks, man.
Thanks, John.